The annals of Roman history are replete with figures of grandeur, power, and, often, infamy. Among these, Gaius Julius Caesar Augustus Germanicus, more commonly known as Caligula, stands out not merely as an emperor, but as a symbol of the extremes to which absolute power can drive an individual. Caligula's reign, though brief, is marked by tales of eccentricity, cruelty, and madness that have fascinated and horrified historians for centuries. Understanding Caligula's rule is crucial for comprehending the broader dynamics of Roman imperial power and the potential dangers inherent in autocratic governance. Born into the Julian-Claudian dynasty, Caligula was a descendant of one of Rome's most illustrious lineages. His father, Germanicus, was a celebrated general, and his mother, Agrippina the Elder, was a prominent member of Roman nobility. Caligula, whose nickname means "little boots" in Latin, gained favor with Roman legions as a child, accompanying his father on military campaigns. This close association with the military and his family's esteemed status positioned him as a prominent figure within Roman society from an early age. Caligula's reign, although only lasting from 37 AD to 41 AD, provides significant insights into the nature of Roman imperial politics, the role of the Senate, and the potential for abuse of power within an autocratic system. Studying his reign helps historians and scholars understand the mechanisms of Roman governance, the impact of mental health on leadership, and the fine line between legitimate authority and tyranny. Furthermore, Caligula's story serves as a cautionary tale about the potential for human excess and the vulnerabilities within a system that concentrates power in the hands of a single individual. Caligula's notoriety largely stems from the accounts of ancient historians such as Suetonius, Cassius Dio, and Tacitus, who depicted him as a tyrant plagued by insanity. His actions, ranging from declaring himself a living god to engaging in extravagant and wasteful spending, contributed to his lasting image as one of Rome's most deranged leaders. His reign is significant not only for its direct impact on Rome during his time but also for how it shaped the perceptions of subsequent generations about the dangers of absolute power and the importance of checks and balances within governance systems. Gaius Julius Caesar Augustus Germanicus was born on August 31, 12 AD, into a family deeply entrenched in the political and military fabric of Rome. His father, Germanicus, was a beloved general, often hailed as one of Rome's greatest military leaders. His mother, Agrippina the Elder, was the granddaughter of Augustus, the first Roman emperor, linking Caligula directly to the founding lineage of the Roman Empire. This prestigious lineage positioned Caligula as a significant figure from birth, with expectations and pressures that would shape his early years. Caligula's childhood was marked by both privilege and peril. He spent his early years in the military camps alongside his father, earning the affection of the soldiers who bestowed upon him the affectionate nickname, Caligula, due to the small soldier's boots, caligae, he wore. However, his family's prominence also made them targets in the treacherous world of Roman politics. The death of his father under mysterious circumstances, likely due to poisoning, and the subsequent persecution of his mother and brothers by the reigning emperor Tiberius, cast a shadow over his formative years. The path to the imperial throne was paved with blood and betrayal. After the death of Germanicus, Caligula and his remaining family members were effectively held as hostages by Tiberius on the island of Capri. Despite this, Caligula managed to endear himself to Tiberius, often engaging in acts of flattery and subservience. This cunning maneuvering, combined with the elimination of potential rivals, eventually positioned him as Tiberius's successor. When Tiberius died in 37 AD, possibly murdered by Caligula himself or his close ally Macro, Caligula ascended to the throne, greeted with enthusiasm by the Roman populace who hoped for a return to the glory days of his father's legacy. When Caligula ascended to the throne in 37 AD, the Roman populace and political elite greeted him with immense enthusiasm and relief. The reign of his predecessor, Tiberius, had been marked by suspicion, political purges, and seclusion, creating a sense of gloom and fear across the empire. Caligula, being the son of the beloved Germanicus, was seen as a beacon of hope. His youth, charm, and the lingering affection for his father's legacy contributed to a wave of optimism. The initial months of his reign saw widespread public celebrations, games, and feasts, fostering a sense of renewed vigor and expectation in the empire. Caligula's early reign was characterized by a series of popular reforms and public gestures that further endeared him to the masses. He granted bonuses to the Praetorian Guard, the soldiers, and various other civic groups, solidifying his support among the military and the common people. He also restored the practice of electing magistrates, which was seen as a move to revive the traditional republican values and involve the Senate more in governance. Additionally, he organized lavish games and spectacles, demonstrating his generosity and desire to entertain and please the populace. These actions, combined with his efforts to recall political exiles and halt treason trials, initially portrayed him as a benevolent and progressive ruler. Despite the promising start, signs of Caligula's eccentricity and cruelty began to emerge relatively early in his reign. His extravagant spending on games and public shows started depleting the imperial treasury, leading to financial strain. His behavior became increasingly erratic and unpredictable, raising concerns among the Senate and his close advisors. He began displaying a disturbing tendency towards extreme cruelty and sadism, often deriving pleasure from the suffering of others. One of the first major incidents that signaled his descent into madness was his illness in the fall of 37 AD. Caligula fell gravely ill, and his recovery was marked by a noticeable shift in his personality. He began exhibiting delusions of grandeur, claiming divine status, and demanding to be worshipped as a living god. This demand for deification was unprecedented and deeply unsettling for both the Roman elite and the general populace, who were accustomed to revering deceased emperors as gods but not a living ruler. Caligula's cruelty extended to those around him. He forced prominent senators to run for miles in front of his chariot, subjected his subjects to humiliating and deadly trials, and indulged in bizarre and cruel entertainments. He is also reputed to have had incestuous relationships with his sisters and is said to have prostituted them to other men. His unpredictable behavior and ruthless actions instilled a climate of fear and paranoia within the Roman political landscape. Moreover, Caligula's construction projects, while grandiose, often served more as testaments to his vanity than practical improvements for the empire. He famously ordered the construction of a massive floating bridge across the Bay of Baiae, reportedly to defy a prophecy that he had no more chance of becoming emperor than of riding a horse across the Gulf of Baiae. This costly and ultimately pointless project was emblematic of his capricious and wasteful nature. Caligula's descent into madness was marked by a series of increasingly bizarre and violent incidents that demonstrated his unstable psyche. One of the first notable incidents was his behavior towards the Senate. After his recovery from a serious illness in 37 AD, Caligula's personality underwent a drastic transformation. He began to treat senators with open contempt and paranoia, often subjecting them to degrading punishments and arbitrary executions. For instance, he is reported to have made his horse, Incitatus, a senator, dressing it in a cloak of honor and even planning to appoint a consul. This act was intended to mock the Senate and demonstrate his absolute power and disdain for its authority. Caligula's bizarre decrees and acts of cruelty were not limited to his dealings with the Senate. He also engaged in bizarre public spectacles, such as having himself worshipped as a living deity and participating in degrading games and orgies, further alienating those around him. Caligula's relationship with the Senate quickly deteriorated from one of cautious cooperation to open hostility. Initially, he sought to consolidate his power by reinstating some of the senatorial privileges that had been curtailed under Tiberius. However, his increasing paranoia and erratic behavior led him to suspect even his closest advisors of plotting against him. The infamous incident where Caligula ordered the execution of his own cousin and heir, Gemellus, under the pretext of treason, exemplifies his growing mistrust. His interactions with senators became increasingly violent. Some were executed on trivial charges, while others were forced into humiliating servitude or suicide. This reign of terror created a climate of fear and instability within the Roman political hierarchy, where loyalty to Caligula was not guaranteed and betrayal was often met with death. Caligula's tyranny was further exemplified by his indulgence in acts of extreme debauchery. He held lavish parties and public spectacles that featured unimaginable excesses, such as feasts where guests were served food made from rare and exotic animals, or events where he engaged in acts of public cruelty and sadism. One particularly notorious event was the mass execution of a group of nobles during a public festival, where he forced them to fight each other to the death for his amusement. His personal life was equally scandalous. His supposed incestuous relationships with his sisters, along with his numerous sexual exploits, shocked both Rome and the provinces. These acts of debauchery were not merely personal indulgences but served as public displays of his unchecked power and moral decay. Despite his reputation for madness and cruelty, Caligula harbored grandiose military ambitions. He believed that the Roman Empire should expand its borders and assert dominance over neighboring territories. His initial military ambitions were focused on the Germanic tribes, with a particular desire to avenge the death of his father, Germanicus, who had died under mysterious circumstances while campaigning in Germania. In 39 AD, Caligula assembled a formidable force to launch a campaign against the Germanic tribes, intending to conquer new territories. However, this campaign was short-lived and ended in disastrous retreat. Caligula's arrogance and lack of military strategy led to severe losses and a retreat that further tarnished his reputation. The campaign's failure demonstrated not only his military incompetence but also his reckless disregard for the lives of his soldiers. Caligula's approach to foreign policy was characterized by impulsiveness and a desire to project power. He famously ordered his soldiers to collect seashells on the shores of Britain, declaring the conquest complete and the island subdued, despite never having set foot there. This act was both a demonstration of his delusions of grandeur and a symbol of his detachment from reality. His erratic decisions extended to his interactions with other states and client kingdoms. Caligula attempted to assert dominance over the kingdoms of Judea and Mauritania by imposing heavy tributes and demanding absolute loyalty. His policies were often contradictory, oscillating between attempts at diplomacy and acts of aggression, which created confusion and instability across the empire's borders. Caligula's reign had a profound impact on Rome's military and political standing. His erratic foreign policy and military failures weakened Rome's defenses and strained its resources. The soldiers, demoralized by the losses and the emperor's lack of strategic acumen, began to lose faith in his leadership. The legions, which had once been the backbone of Rome's military might, were now in disarray, their morale shattered by the emperor's unpredictable and often absurd commands. Politically, Caligula's tyranny and capriciousness eroded the stability of the Roman state. His incessant purges and executions of senators and noblemen created a vacuum of power and bred fear and suspicion throughout the Senate. The once mighty institution of the Senate was reduced to a shadow of its former self, powerless and cowed under Caligula's brutal regime. Caligula's reign was characterized by extravagant spending and fiscal mismanagement that strained the Roman economy. His lavish expenditures on public spectacles, games, and imperial displays quickly depleted the treasury, leading to financial instability. The bonuses he granted to the military and civic groups, while initially popular, further exacerbated the economic strain. To fund his projects and maintain his extravagant lifestyle, Caligula resorted to heavy taxation, confiscations, and extortion, which alienated the wealthy classes and burdened the economy. Caligula's rule witnessed a flurry of ambitious construction projects and public works initiatives, many of which were undertaken for personal glorification rather than practical benefit. One of his most famous projects was the construction of an elaborate floating bridge across the Bay of Baiae, a project meant to showcase his power and defy conventional engineering wisdom. He also embarked on extensive building projects in Rome itself, including the renovation of temples, aqueducts, and public buildings, often inscribing his name prominently on these structures as a testament to his grandeur. However, while these projects contributed to the beautification of Rome and provided employment opportunities, they were financially ruinous. The exorbitant costs drained the imperial treasury and burdened the population with increased taxes and levies. Moreover, Caligula's penchant for building projects that served little practical purpose, such as the floating bridge, underscored his irrationality and detachment from the economic realities facing the empire. The economic consequences of Caligula's fiscal policies and extravagant spending were severe. The Roman economy, already strained by years of civil unrest and military campaigns, struggled under the weight of Caligula's financial mismanagement. The heavy taxation and confiscations imposed to fund his projects led to widespread discontent among the populace and economic hardship for many. The depletion of the treasury weakened Rome's ability to respond to external threats and exacerbated social inequalities, further destabilizing the empire. Moreover, Caligula's economic policies contributed to a decline in investor confidence and economic stagnation. The focus on personal aggrandizement and short-term gain at the expense of long-term economic stability undermined Rome's economic resilience and eroded public trust in imperial governance. Ultimately, the economic repercussions of Caligula's reign would have lasting effects on the empire's fiscal health and political stability in the years to come. Caligula's religious beliefs and practices were characterized by a megalomaniacal desire for deification and divine status. He believed himself to be a living god and demanded to be worshipped as such by his subjects. This blasphemous assertion of divinity was unprecedented in Roman imperial history and deeply offended traditional religious sensibilities. Caligula's demand for worship as a living god was met with resistance and resentment from both the Roman populace and religious authorities. While previous emperors had been deified posthumously, Caligula sought to elevate himself to divine status during his lifetime. He ordered the construction of temples and statues in his honor, commanded sacrifices to be made in his name, and even had coins minted with his likeness alongside the gods of Olympus. These actions provoked outrage among the Roman elite and religious institutions, who viewed his claims to divinity as sacrilegious and dangerous. Caligula's conflicts with religious institutions and figures further exacerbated tensions within Roman society. He clashed frequently with the Senate and prominent priests who refused to acknowledge his divine status. Caligula's persecution of those who opposed his religious innovations included the desecration of temples, the confiscation of religious treasures, and the expulsion of priests deemed disloyal. His ruthless suppression of dissent within religious circles created a climate of fear and compliance, further consolidating his control over the spiritual life of the empire. Moreover, Caligula's religious policies undermined the traditional authority of Roman religious institutions, weakening their influence and contributing to a broader erosion of moral and spiritual values within Roman society. His disregard for established religious practices and his promotion of his own cult of personality represented a radical departure from Roman traditions and contributed to the growing disillusionment with imperial rule during his reign. Caligula's personal life was marked by tumultuous relationships and scandalous affairs. He married several times during his short reign, each marriage serving political or personal motives. His first marriage was to Julia-Claudia, which ended in divorce. He then married Livia Orestia but quickly divorced her after discovering her previous marriage, which he considered scandalous. His most significant marriage was to Caesonia, a woman known for her beauty and fiery personality. Caesonia bore Caligula his only child, Julia Drusilla, whom he adored. Apart from his marriages, Caligula engaged in numerous love affairs and liaisons, often with married women or those of noble birth. His promiscuity and disregard for marital fidelity scandalized Roman society and contributed to his reputation as a libertine and hedonist. Caligula's treatment of his family members and close associates was marked by suspicion, betrayal, and cruelty. He showed favoritism towards his sisters, particularly Drusilla, whom he reportedly loved passionately and whose death in 38 AD devastated him. However, his relationships with other family members were fraught with tension and violence. Caligula's paranoia extended to his closest advisors and confidants. He frequently accused them of treason or disloyalty, resulting in executions or exile. Even those who had been loyal to him in the past were not immune to his suspicions. For example, his trusted advisor Macro, who helped him secure the throne, was eventually executed on charges of conspiracy. Caligula's reign is surrounded by numerous anecdotes and rumors that highlight his eccentric behavior and excesses. One famous anecdote involves his plan to make his horse, Incitatus, a consul, symbolizing his contempt for the Senate and his belief in his absolute authority. Another anecdote describes how he would lavish attention on his favorite horse, feeding it oats mixed with gold flakes and providing it with a marble stable. Rumors about Caligula's sexual exploits and perversions also abound. It is said that he engaged in incestuous relationships with his sisters and held wild orgies where debauchery and excess were rampant. These tales, whether entirely factual or exaggerated by historians hostile to his regime, contributed to his enduring reputation as a depraved and tyrannical ruler. As Caligula's reign progressed, opposition to his rule grew among the Senate, the military, and even among his own family members. His erratic behavior, financial mismanagement, and religious blasphemies had alienated significant segments of Roman society. The Senate, in particular, chafed under his despotic rule and resented his demands for divine honors. In 41 AD, a conspiracy to assassinate Caligula took shape among disaffected members of the Senate, led by Cassius Chaerea, a tribune of the Praetorian Guard who had been insulted and mistreated by Caligula. The conspirators sought to restore the authority of the Senate and eliminate the tyrannical rule of Caligula. On January 24, 41 AD, Caligula attended a sporting event at the Palatine Hill. Unaware of the impending danger, he was approached by several conspirators, including Chaerea, who attacked him with swords and fatally wounded him. The assassination marked the end of Caligula's tumultuous reign and sent shockwaves throughout the Roman Empire. Following Caligula's assassination, chaos ensued in Rome. The Senate quickly moved to restore order and stability, declaring Caligula a public enemy and erasing his memory from public records. The Praetorian Guard, initially loyal to Caligula, was instrumental in ensuring the smooth transition of power. Claudius, Caligula's uncle, emerged as his unexpected successor, taking control of the empire and seeking to stabilize Rome after the turbulent reign of his nephew. Caligula's assassination and the subsequent ascension of Claudius marked a pivotal moment in Roman history, highlighting the dangers of autocratic rule and the fragility of imperial authority. His reign, though brief and marred by madness, left an indelible mark on the collective memory of Rome, serving as a cautionary tale about the perils of absolute power and the consequences of unchecked tyranny. Caligula's reign is primarily documented through the writings of contemporary historians such as Suetonius, Cassius Dio, and Tacitus, as well as later Roman historians who drew from these primary sources. These accounts portray Caligula as a tyrant consumed by megalomania, cruelty, and moral depravity. They detail his extravagant spending, erratic behavior, and despotic rule, highlighting his impact on Roman society and governance during his brief but tumultuous reign. Over the centuries, Caligula's image has evolved from that of a tyrant and madman to a symbol of the dangers of absolute power and unchecked authority. Initially depicted as a monstrous ruler driven by insanity and debauchery, modern interpretations have attempted to contextualize his actions within the political and social dynamics of Roman imperial history. Some historians argue that Caligula's behavior may have been exaggerated or distorted by biased accounts, reflecting the political climate and the agendas of his contemporaries. Caligula's reign had profound implications for subsequent Roman history. His despotic rule and the chaos that followed his assassination underscored the vulnerabilities of the Roman imperial system. The Senate, emboldened by its role in removing Caligula from power, sought to assert itself more forcefully in the selection and control of future emperors. The memory of Caligula's excesses and tyranny influenced later emperors, who sought to avoid comparisons and maintain a balance between imperial authority and senatorial oversight. Furthermore, Caligula's reign highlighted the challenges of succession within the imperial family and the dangers of relying on personal charisma rather than institutional stability to maintain imperial power. His assassination and the swift transition to Claudius demonstrated both the volatility of Roman politics and the resilience of its governing institutions in times of crisis. In summary, Caligula's reign was characterized by initial promise followed by a descent into madness and tyranny. His early popularity gave way to widespread fear and opposition as his erratic behavior and cruel policies alienated the Senate and the Roman populace. Economically, his extravagant spending and fiscal mismanagement strained the empire's resources, while his religious innovations and demand for divine honors further destabilized Roman society. Caligula's reign serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of absolute power and the consequences of unchecked ambition. His personal excesses and erratic behavior undermined the stability of the Roman Empire and left a legacy of fear and uncertainty. The rapid deterioration of his rule highlights the fragility of autocratic systems and the importance of institutional checks and balances in governance. Despite his infamy, Caligula's place in history remains complex and contested. While he is remembered primarily for his cruelty and madness, some historians argue that his reign also exposed deeper issues within Roman society, including the concentration of power in the hands of a single individual and the ethical boundaries of imperial authority. Ultimately, Caligula's legacy serves as a reminder of the enduring relevance of his reign in understanding the complexities of Roman imperial politics and the human capacity for both greatness and depravity. This conclusion summarizes Caligula's complex legacy, providing a nuanced perspective on his impact on Roman history and the enduring lessons his reign offers to scholars and historians.